Welcome to Parlor Talks. If you're an owner or manager of a label, folding carton, flexible packaging, or corrugated packaging printing company, this podcast is for you. We'll dive into the latest trends, innovations, strategies, and best practices shaping the package printing industry.
Welcome to Parlor Talks. I'm Kaylee Vandewater, Associate Content and Online Editor for Packaging Impressions, and your host for today's episode. I'm really excited to be celebrating Women's History Month today with Terri-Lynn Levesque, Vice President of Administration at Royal Containers, who is also Chair of AICC. Terri-Lynn, thanks so much for joining me today. Like I mentioned, it's Women's History Month, and I really want to hear about your journey through the packaging industry as a woman. So can you tell me a little bit about what originally drew you to the industry, and did you picture your career going this way when you started out?
I would say, like most, my story, started, in a weird way in the industry. I've actually been at Royal Containers for over 28 years. So I started really young working at the same company. It's the only company I've ever worked for, which again, I'm a Zennial. I'm a halfway between a millennial and a Gen X. So I don't like to job hop. I like comfort, and that's probably, why I've stayed with Royal Containers for 28 years. But I actually started in high school working in the shop floor. So my mom worked for Royal Containers for many years. Mm-hmm. And, I was in high school kind of looking for a summer job. And going into the box plant was, the logical choice, follow my mom to work every day. So she worked in the plant running machines. And so that's what I did for my summer jobs for 4 years. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. And I thought my career path was going to be in teaching. And I look at it now that my career path, I'm still in teaching in a way. Yeah. In the industry with, mentoring and being a leader and being involved in AICC. I still feel that's very, part of my journey and part of my story. It's just, I'm not in a school setting. But I definitely feel that's the reason why I stayed. It's a great industry to be in, packaging as a whole. And I have an owner who's a second generation woman running her company that her dad had started. And so having, a woman president and leader, you want to be a part of that journey. You want to be a part of the story. So that's kind of how I got started and kind of stayed, again, 28 years later. But it's pretty exciting for me this year to step into the role as AICC chairwoman, whatever you want to call it. It's been a journey. It's been a 10-year progress being involved in the association. And I was just, humbled to be considered, with the ranks of the other chair people that have come before me. But I am the first emerging leader. So we have an emerging leaders program, and I graduated out of that a couple of years ago. And to be the first, emerging leader as chairman of AICC, to me, I think that's a huge honor, and I'm so humble that, I was even considered. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how I've got started and how I've stayed in this flourishing industry that, any young person, would want to be a part of from my perspective.
Yeah. And it sounds like you just gradually built up the career and you just wanted to keep staying in it. But I was wondering, was there ever a moment where you realized I'm never leaving this industry? Or maybe not never, never say never, but
never say never.
Is there a moment that kind of was the aha moment, this is where you belong?
I think for me, when I first started out, obviously those summers working, on the manufacturing floor in the plant, you learn a lot. You learn about machinery. You learn about, for me, the biggest thing that I took away from my career, and again, maybe advice I would pass on to anybody else, is you need to understand the whole ecosystem of not just your company that you're working for. You need to understand the packaging any association as a whole, right? You need to build those relationships. So I mean, everybody goes through a point in their career where they're like, okay, is this where I'm going to be for the long haul? I mean, the younger generations behind us, statistically, they're going to change careers, a couple of times in their lifetime. But for me, it was just, there was always a path for growth. And to me, that was important, right? I didn't want to be just in customer service or, just as the receptionist, for a period of time. And there's people that do that, and that's wonderful. But for me, it was always like, how can I grow? How can I develop? How can I be a better leader? And so for me, it was making sure that that whole ecosystem, I have sat in every department that I've led. And that gives me a unique perspective as a leader, because I've been in the trenches. I know what their challenges are. I know what, daily tasks they have to complete in order to make, Royal successful. And so I felt like that's something that was really, really important for me. I was able to understand the whole ecosystem. And, again, working for a great company, I've had wonderful mentors within Royal and at AICC. So, I mean, that makes a huge difference when you have people in your corner that are rooting for you and championing you. When you feel like your voice is like this big, it's so small. And building your reputation in the industry, right? It takes work, it takes help, it takes time. And so having mentors and champions behind you, rooting you on, really makes a difference.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of leads nicely into my next question. I was going to ask about, obviously, you probably had a lot of mentors in your career, but is there someone at the start who really made an impact for you, and why did their support matter so much?
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many, it's really, really hard to narrow it down to one. Obviously, my mom, getting me involved in the industry was a big step. I don't think she expected me to stay. Just because, she had worked here 20 years doesn't mean I was expected to stay 20 years. And she knew that teaching kind of was where my career path was going to go. But I would definitely say our president, Kim Nelson, really had a huge impact. She was so empowering for me early on. She took a chance. I was just a, kid working out in the plant in the summers. And she took a chance to give me an opportunity to work in the office. I started in invoicing, receptionist, the front office, front desk. And, she really took a chance and showed me that, she's always known my potential before I know it myself. So she's really had a huge impact on my journey. I've had some great mentors at AICC that, again, have helped from my early stages of just getting involved in the association, then getting involved in emerging leaders. There's been a few people that have helped guide me along the way. But I would say probably Kim has had the biggest impact in my career with, she covered all of my education, whatever I wanted to do. I did go to college and take bookkeeping and accounting, and that was kind of the need that Royal had at the time. And so she supported that. And like I said, she covered all of my education. So, I mean, she's made a huge investment in me. And, that's where that loyalty comes from on my end, that, I want to see Royal succeed. I want to see Royal passed on to a third generation and be involved in whatever capacity in the future that helps, Royal succeed. And also the same with AICC. I'm very involved in emerging leaders still. And I just want to make sure that, my whole theme for my chairman year is legacy in action, setting up the next generation for success. Because that's is my success as a leader, is how successful the next generation behind me is. And that's my theme. And that's kind of how I've built my career. So making sure that that next generation is set up for success. And again, I need to be a mentor to that next generation, and making sure that, they thrive and they learn from my mistakes, and, just really making an impact on whoever wants to be involved.
Great. That's awesome. So like you mentioned, you you've worked in pretty much every part of the business. How has that kind of shaped your leadership approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to, when we say, okay, hey, we're coming up with this, process change, it's kind of easier to get buy-in from the team when you've lived in that world. You know the challenges that are going to be faced ahead with, all of a sudden we need to, change in how we do non-conformances, let's say. How having that impact of living in that world for many years and understanding the impact that it's going to have to the team, I really think is a key important part for any leader. You can't just walk in day one and expect to make all these changes. You have to sit back and listen and learn. And that's a key thing for me is I always like to sit back and listen and let them come up with solutions. Don't solve it for them, because that's not how you build leaders. That's not how you build decision makers. That's not how you build problem solvers, right? I don't micromanage my team in any way. I travel a lot for work and for AICC, so I need my team to be autonomous. And I really think it comes back to our core values as a company, living and breathing those core values. And it helps shape who I am, who the leaders I'm training behind me are, and it shapes my team. But empowering them to come up with solutions. And sometimes we're in alignment and sometimes we're not. And sometimes it's an opportunity for me to learn, right? I'm not in the trenches every day like they are. So it's an opportunity for me to, take my own biases out of, this is how we did it 10 years ago, but it's not how we're going to take it to, the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. So as chair of AICC, I'm wondering, are there any conversations that are happening now that weren't happening 5 or 10 years ago even?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much conversations. I mean, I think when I look at AICC 10 years ago, kind of when I started in Emerging Leaders, we had a group of about 60, I'll call them kids, even though I was one of them, in my 30s, still call myself a kid. The thought process was we needed to have a next generation. So that to me was a huge progress is, the association's already thinking about, well, what's the next generation board member? What's the next generation entrepreneur that's coming through? So they developed this emerging leaders program to kind of tackle that. And when I graduated out of the program in 2018, I mean, it had grown from 60 something kids to 120. And I think they're up to close to 160 people involved in the program in some capacity right now. So to me, that's not a conversation that was happening 10 years ago. And even just to see, the younger generations, people coming out of college, people coming out of, Clemson University, getting involved in AICC and just the industry as a whole is so exciting for me to see, these kids in design, kids in graphics, kids in structural, building machines. There's so many opportunities in the corrugated industry if you really want to. So that's where I see the change happened and still continuing to happen.
Yeah. So I know that you've set some priorities for your year as chair of AICC. And you're also the first emerging leader in the chair role. So I'm wondering, how does that perspective as that first EL in the role shape those priorities you have for the year ahead?
Yeah, I mean, even just I go back to my theme, right? My theme is legacy and action. That's to me the responsibility is to set up the association and the industry, the next generation that's going to be. I'm not going to be on the board in 10 years from now. So, making sure that everybody is set up for success, learn from the past, but set a new innovative path forward. I mean, AI is changing my job every day, your job every day, right? There's so much that we don't even know with AI that's going to impact, our association and just the world in general in the next 5 years. So leaving space for those voices that are, going to be those innovators, the ones that are going to push the boundaries of, the whole industry, is really, really important to me. And I think being in the Emerging Leaders Program, again, that's a program for, young professionals getting in the industry who are under the age of 35, giving space for them to speak up, giving space for them to share their ideas and their opinions. I learned more about ChatGPT than from my 16-year-old who's in high school than, I do YouTube videos or TikTok or anything like that. So it's just giving them space to be the innovators that, I can see, like my parents, my mom who's 65, right? She's not going to embrace AI the way that my generation has. And even just having 5 generations working in the same building, it comes with its own unique successes and challenges. And we've not had 5 generations working in the workforce ever in history until this point. So I think that was kind of where my theme came from. It's, there's a shift happening. There's younger kids that are getting involved, and we need to leave space for them to be able to speak up and share their ideas.
Right. I love that philosophy. So I kind of want to look at the industry in general now. Like, when you look at the industry today, where do you see the most meaningful progress for women, and where do we still have work to do?
That's a really tough question, just because I didn't really face a lot of the, stigmas or, a woman being in sales back 20 years ago in the industry. They did have some tough roads ahead of them. They did have to forge their own path. I really never really had to face that. So it's kind of hard to talk about that. And from my perspective, but I've seen more women involved. We have a Women in Packaging in our association, and in the AICC, we do have a dedicated group called Women in Packaging. And that group wasn't started 5 years ago. That's something new. So I feel like there's a bigger space for women. The demographic of how many women are in the industry as a whole is changing. Versus a few years ago, the number of women in sales were very small, whereas, there's a lot more women involved in those capacities, in those types of jobs. There's lots of women that are, entrepreneurs starting new companies or leading companies. So I feel like that's kind of been a big shift from my perspective, sitting back and looking 10 years ago to now. And I see that continuing to grow. I don't see that changing at all, whether you're a woman or you're just a young professional. I can see that shift happening where they're getting more involved. They're stepping up, they're sharing their ideas, and they want to be a part of what the future of the industry looks like.
Right. So obviously there's a lot more women voices being heard in the industry and young professionals as well. But I'm wondering, how do you think women leaders have reshaped the culture of packaging over the course of time, maybe like during your career, past couple years?
Yeah, obviously, when you're a part of an association, when you're a part of an industry that's thriving like it is, building those networks and relationships are really important. And as women, that's something that comes easy to us, to most of us anyways. Making those connections, being in a room, and knowing that, you could be a minority, but still willing to step up and speak up. I just feel like there's so much relationship wise that we bring to the table. And, just willing to share our ideas. I find like even just Kim Nelson as our president, she wants the whole industry to succeed. So if it means, a competitor, has a machine go down and we need to help them out, we're willing to do that. And there's not a lot of industries that do that. They wouldn't just open their doors to, a competitor and say, absolutely, we'll help you for the betterment of the association and the industry. There's not a lot of, industries that do that. So I think that's unique to us. And I feel like that's an important role for women to play, is keeping those doors open, connecting those relationships, and just seeing the industry as a whole grow. It's from my perspective, that's one of the most important things.
No, that's awesome. And I love that anecdote of like just being willing to help each other. I think that's amazing. So looking back on your career, I'm wondering about, was there ever any advice that you wish you had gotten at the beginning of your career, rather than learn the hard way, or like learned later on in some way from somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, always bringing solutions, and oftentimes you'll sit in a room, with, people that are, been in the industry longer, more powerful, more experienced than you. Because I only have a college, I'd say only, but I have a college background, whereas, I could be sitting in a room with somebody that's been to university for 5 years, and you feel like your voice is so small. And just having the confidence to speak up, even when you think questions are silly, and finding your voice, regardless of your circumstances. Like I just love talking to people and learning about their experience, because there's so much that can come from that shared knowledge. So that's been kind of a piece of advice, is just learn, just don't talk, ask questions, and learn from others, because there's so much knowledge you can gain just from, having a conversation about. And I mean, with AICC in general, we have a network. I feel like it's, AICC's strength is in building relationships in the network. So if I have, a process problem, I have a machine go down, I have a network of people that I can call, and they're going to help me find solutions that, I only know what I know within the four walls of this building. So making sure that you take time to foster those relationships outside of your company is really important. It can help you find your own blind spots that you're not really, accustomed to. Sometimes we don't like to self-reflect. But I think, just finding those people that'll help you grow and learn in a positive environment. And obviously for me, it's just learning every aspect of the business, learn everything you can, say yes to everything, because it's helped me build my career. So those two things, I think, and confidence, right? You don't really have a lot of confidence in the beginning, but just knowing that you're on the right path. Sometimes you just need somebody to tell you that, you are doing great work. You're on the right path. There's a future, I might be in payroll today, but I could be the office manager in 5 years, because that's literally how it went for me. I just learned as much as I could. I was in bookkeeping, I was in customer service, I was in estimating and design for a small period of time. So I feel like the more you can say yes, and that's that cliche of you being the yes person. You don't want to get taken advantage of, but you also want to have the opportunity to learn for yourself.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about young professionals as well, and I'm wondering, what skills do you think they should prioritize right now?
Good question. I think definitely that relationship, that networking building. You need to find peers that are, within your same demographic, could be people within your same role outside of your company. But having a mentor that's older than you and younger than you is really important. and, just being open to learning. To me, I've always approached my job and my career as I'm not the expert in the room. There's a lot I can learn from others. So that's kind of really, really important.
Right. And I also want to hear about your outlook for the future of the industry. What excites you most about the future of packaging?
There is so much opportunity obviously for growth. I mean, our industry is thriving. It's not going anywhere, right? With e-commerce and, graphics and, high-end displays that we're seeing in retail. I'm excited for that future. I mean, e-commerce is not going away. We're all ordering everything off of, Amazon and Walmart and all these other programs. So I'm excited to see that, but I'm really trying to embrace AI and how we could leverage it in a good way, because I know there's a lot of things that it can be leveraged for in bad ways. But I'm really trying to, carve out time in my day to stay on top of, as much as I can, what AI can do. I mean, I have marketing that reports to me. AI is going to change how we do marketing. I have IT that reports to me in my job as VP of administration. So again, that's going to shape, how we approach cybersecurity within our company and things like that. So, and even just like machinery. I mean, there's so much advancements in machinery, automation. I don't necessarily look at it as it's going to reduce jobs or, put people out of work. I look at it as an opportunity for, do we need to send people back to school to learn, certain aspects of what we don't even know yet of innovation, and just take that perspective that, the younger generation's bringing to AI as well, and embrace it all. But I can see AI probably having the most impact too. Even data collection, right? We've got ERP systems that don't really talk to each other, and leveraging AI to take those datas and put them together and summarize it would be amazing. Look at all the new KPIs we could come out of, leveraging all that data, to show that it's where we can improve. And it's also when we know what success looks like, right? When we have these KPIs that can amalgamate data. So there's so much to be excited for. I don't even know where to start, but that's kind of where my head's at, is just spending time every day, carving out time to just embrace technology and what's coming new, what new trends in retail are coming that we're going to have to adopt our business to, things like that.
Well, that was all the time we have today. So Terri-Lynn, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about your experience in the industry. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, absolutely.